The Gentle Rebel Podcast.
For introverts, highly sensitive people, and creative misfits.
Well, hello. Welcome to the Gentle Rebel Podcast. My name is Andy Morton. This is a weekly show committed to help unite your inner stoic and your quiet sensitivity so that you can design a rewarding, creative life and change the world from the inside out without getting overwhelmed or burned out. I hope you're well. This is the first episode for a few weeks that I have no interview guest. It's just back to little old me talking about stuff. I hope that's okay. Well, even if it's not okay, I don't mind if you dislike me because of it. Why? Well, I'm glad you asked, because you've given me an opportunity for a great segue. I've been reading The Courage to be Disliked, How to Free Yourself, Change Your Life and Achieve Real Happiness by Kishimi and Koga. It's one that has been it's been on my reading list for a long time. Started reading about 6 months ago, kind of dipped into the beginning of it, but didn't really kind of pursue it a whole lot because I had other stuff that I was reading at the time. But I've really delved deeply into it over the past I'd say month or so, 6 weeks maybe. And I mean, starting with the title, it definitely speaks to something that many of us are, I think, very aware of that we need intuitively. You know, I bet it makes sense rather than sounds like a complete paradox or a contradiction, you know, the courage to be disliked. It might not sit comfortably, but it is something that I think, you know, we know that it stops us from acting in ways that bring the best of ourselves to the world when we people please. You know, we talk about people pleasing quite a lot. We understand that if we try to please everybody with our actions, with our words, with the way that we live our lives, then we'll likely end up pleasing nobody and actually just living a life that's kind of miserable because it's an impossible goal and it leads us to a place that is not of our choosing and it's not the ideal and it doesn't bring the best of ourselves into the world. And the question of why we might choose to obsess over getting people to like us or to like what we do becomes kind of pulled into focus at this point. For many introverts and highly sensitive people, this is often a huge thing. You know, we want to do right by people. We want to keep the peace. We want things to go smoothly. We maybe kind of aren't a big fan of conflict. And for sensitive types, there's a real awareness of what people need as well. The drive within us to meet that need, even if it's not our need to meet, or it sits even outside of our value system or whatever, that kind of that compulsion to make people feel better or whatever, you know, it's not even the thing of making them wanting to make them like us, but it's all sort of part of the same mixing bowl. I also think this idea of building the courage to be disliked is an intuitive thing within us. It beats at the heart of what it means to be a gentle rebel. It's answering the call of what is right over that which will appease or please other people. It's standing up for things of value, even though it will get certain people's backs up. And in this book, it becomes clear as to why this matters. It serves as an introduction to Adlerian psychology, a school of thought developed by Austrian psychotherapist Alfred Adler. I was not particularly familiar with many of his theories before reading this book, only touching on a few bits at school like inferiority feelings and complexes and all of that stuff. But this part of the book that really focuses in on why and how we need to develop the courage to be disliked really struck me as good to share in a podcast episode because it's so resonant with these ideas of gentle rebellion, and I think it speaks to introverts and highly sensitive people, and definitely has a huge amount of kind of shared value with Stoicism. So I just want to spend some time going through a few of the ideas that come up in the book, unpack them a little bit, and share why I think or what I think this makes possible for us if we take it seriously. So that's exactly what I'm going to do today. If you enjoy this podcast and you'd like more, there's a simple way to show support. It takes me loads of hours each week to make sure that every show's complete. I love to write, record and share, and it's really nice to know you care. The best way, and it don't take long, is to become a Patreon. So visit andymott.com/Patreon. There are 4 levels you can choose from. Each one unlocks a ton of fun. If you become a Patreon, I'll say your name at the end of this song. Visit andymott.com/Patreon. Patreon. Patreon. No new Patreons to tell you about this week, I'm afraid, sadly. But anyway, if you'd like me to read your name right now in a future episode, then please, go to andymort.com/Patreon and become a sustaining member of the Gentle Rebel podcast community and all of that stuff. So, no one wants to be disliked. And that's not what this is about. The issue is, regardless of the fact that none of us wants to be disliked, there are still going to be people who dislike us, every one of us. And yet it's a fear that many of us submit to and surrender to and give kind of power to. It's a fear that often causes us to act beyond who we are, or, out of character. Perhaps to hide our true self inside, to become shy, to not allow anyone to see the truth of who we are because we fear the judgment that others will kind of put on that. For other people, it might be to act up, to share, bold assertions, to tell tall tales of how great they are, to seek attention, to show off, that kind of thing. The fact is, none of these things actually achieve the goal of getting people to like us. They are much more likely to do the opposite, in fact. The only real option that we have left is to reject that stuff, to act courageously in the right way, deep in the knowledge that we will be disliked, to accept the fact we will be disliked, and to even be mindful and embracing of it. I will be disliked whatever I do, so I might as well be me and create the world that I believe in the process of that being disliked. Because even if we try not to be disliked, or we try to be liked, we will still be disliked. In fact, we will be disliked even more as something that isn't even who we are. It isn't even something that we want to do, to be, to see, change the world with, or whatever. How ludicrous would that be? To find people disliking us as something that doesn't even reflect the stuff we want our lives to kind of speak. There's a segment in the book where the philosopher and the youth are in dialogue about freedom. And one of the definitions of freedom that the philosopher kind of sets out is simply being disliked by other people. Not as a defensive attitude, but as a true and happy embrace of your own principles and values. In other words, if you're disliked by others, then you're free to embrace the stuff that really matters to you. No one can touch you when you are free like this. One of the strongest weapons that we have as a collective society is shunning and shaming people who kind of profess views or do things that we don't like, that are taboo, that are kind of counter to our shared values. But if you consistently and courageously act despite the fact that people don't and won't like you, you'll break through to the other side. Public shaming or kind of private shaming, or like shaming in social circles, cannot be used against someone who does not fear being disliked. And this chimes with the idea of paradoxical intention, which I've talked about before. One of Viktor Frankl's theories, that to address a problem, a struggle that you're experiencing, the best thing to do is to kind of shine a light on it and to exaggerate it. The example he uses in Man's Search for Meaning is the profuse sweating that a patient experiences, I think in social situations and at work, when he's maybe delivering presentations, something like that. I can't remember exactly, but he becomes so worked up by the fear of sweating, the fear of this thing happening, that it causes it to happen. And Frankl's solution is to encourage him to embrace this sweat, to talk about it openly, to acknowledge the elephant in the room before it becomes an elephant in a room that nobody is able to talk about. And then not only does it help him realize that actually this sweating thing is not that much of a big deal. People don't really care about it all that much, or they might do for a minute, but then, that's it. Not only does it do that, but it also actually works, and he sweats less because he's kind of looking at it directly. He's shining a light on it. What if it's the same with being disliked? By not caring about being disliked, what if you actually become more likable? This is probably what will happen. You become more likable to the people who resonate with your values and your worldviews, and they connect with them because they are, you profess them in a kind of more open sense. And rather than wandering around with a lukewarm wish for everybody to like you and to behave in ways that aren't very you, which actually cause people to dislike you anyway, you take on an unapologetically full embrace of yourself, which some of those people, they're still going to dislike you for, but other people will find inspiration and encouragement from. No, you're not acting in order to be disliked. You're acting despite the fact that you are going to be disliked. Being disliked isn't the driving force. Your deeper values and your principles are. It's just that there are people who don't appreciate those values and those principles. On a more fundamental level, there will be people who just dislike your voice or your appearance or other natural parts of you that you really have no control over. This is fundamental to Stoicism. One doesn't want to be disliked, but you don't mind if you are. It's the same with other stuff. I don't want to be poor, but I don't mind if I am. I don't want to be alone, but I don't mind if I am. Because the pursuit of being liked, being wealthy, and being in a relationship can lead to some pretty kind of badly judged actions. And these are described in Stoicism as preferred indifference. In other words, things you would rather, things that would, be a better situation as far as you're concerned, but which are ultimately outside of your control. So things that you are not going to be overly concerned over. So the next question is, how do we develop the courage to be disliked? Well, I mean, there's a whole book about it that I've mentioned. I'm not going to read that out, but I'm going to share some of the key points that have stood out to me as really helpful and important. And hopefully you'll get some kind of encouragement out of that as well. So we will get right into those key takeaways that I've found right after this.
If I can hear you breathing, if I can hear you swallowing, well, that means you're too close to me. If I can see Twitter on your phone and everyone you're following, yeah, that means you're too close to me. Please don't be in my personal space. You don't have to be so close that I can smell your face. You really don't have to stand that close to me. I can still hear you when you speak if you're within 100 feet of me.
I just came to the shop to buy some bits for tea. I fill my basket and I'm standing in line thinking about what I watch on TV.
When I get home,
and here you are, your breath on my neck, standing so close to me. Why are you there, breathing down my neck? Seriously?
No, seriously, what's wrong with you? Step back, give me some space, for goodness sake.
So, the inclination not to be disliked is a pretty unhelpful drive. But how do we develop the courage to be disliked and to do so without losing heart and losing confidence? Well, the first thing from the book that kind of stood out to me is this idea of switching from attachment to self, in other words, how others see me, to concern for others, how I see other people. So people with concern for self believe others are people who will do something for them. This kind of sense of entitlement. Their first thought on meeting someone is, what is this person going to give me? This is not necessarily a physical thing, but what they can give them in alignment with their other goals and values, or emotionally, what am I going to take from this person? I mean, something that sprung to mind was like the shallow person who meets someone and writes them off because of their looks. Essentially what they want is someone to mate with. Maybe they're out on a Friday or a Saturday night and they're, looking to pull or whatever. And so they meet someone and they have no physical attraction. They just pass by them and concentrate on trying to attract someone who they are attracted to and obsess over how they are seen by this other person. And in so doing, kind of miss this whole plethora of connection to this other person that is like, just overlooked by this shallow attachment to self that they engage in. Other people don't live to satisfy your expectations, and because of that, they won't. This is important to remember in all manner of situations. When you're attached to yourself and you see everyone as serving you at the center of the universe, then you'll be offended, you'll be disappointed when they don't satisfy your expectations. You'll feel let down by them. You'll detach further from them and attach more to the self. You'll think, they let me down. They're not my comrade. They didn't do anything for me. They're my enemy. We see this a lot. We take things personally that are nothing more than the actions of people who aren't really concerned about one another. Understanding and empathizing with this disposition others have helps enormously in connecting into a community properly. There's that amazing David Foster Wallace quote that sums this up nicely. You'll become way less concerned with what other people think of you when you realize how seldom they do. Secondly, enjoy not being at the center of the world. Sounds like a bit of a weird one, but when we want to be liked, we are, by all intents and purposes, placing ourselves at the center of the universe. We're saying we are the thing that matters, and everyone else kind of revolves around that. If we want to build courage to be disliked, then we need to place ourselves in context. Instead, there are times where we might talk about coming to a place of self-acceptance, and especially around conversations about introversion and high sensitivity, we talk about, being okay about being an introvert, being a highly sensitive person, not apologizing for these parts of who we are, embracing and enjoying the gifts that those things bring. But with this comes the need to put ourselves within the context of a community, not in a position of superiority or inferiority. Instead, to find a sense of belonging which is born from a rejection of what will others give me and what do they owe me, to what can I give them? What can I contribute to this situation, to this group of people, to whatever it is? When we feel that sense of unbelonging, we can become attached to self rather than concern for others, which leads us to see every interaction and relationship for what we can get from it, not what we can give, what we can plug into it. This is not to say that we should throw ourselves at unhealthy relationships and situations where unreasonable demands are being made of us, like being forced to do and be things that don't sit with our values and our natural inclinations, but rather it's to actively commit to contributing to the wider whole, being a part of something bigger than ourselves. So no more, what will they give me? But rather, what can I give them? This is a big change in creative sharing as well. And I think it's really helpful flip that gives us the confidence to begin sharing our gifts. It's not about showing off when you perform a song or write a song, like put a song on social media or whatever to share it. It's not making people look at you. It's about giving what you have to those who need it and accepting that this won't please everybody. Even as a simple mindset change, this can make all the difference to sharing creative projects, to sharing ideas with the world. It's about something bigger than you as an individual. It's about contributing to the broader scope of humankind and even the universe. Thirdly, be invested in the community. So community is a feeling of belonging, of refuge, and a sense of it's okay to be here and to be me. We have many small communities that we're parts of, but these can easily be taken from us, and our sense of normality shifts because we no longer feel like we belong when we lose those little communities. Even if we don't comprehend the universal community of everything and everyone in all space and time. Examples of this might be a workplace, a school, a friendship group, even a family. If the landscape of these small communities changes, and especially with the inevitable passing of time, that's where change occurs. The small community might disappear. It might morph it might move, in which case it's necessary to always comprehend what is a broader community beyond that. We are all interconnected, even if we don't feel it. The hermit lives in a house created by another person, using materials constructed by others. They might buy a loaf of bread with money that will go back to the producers of the flour and the butter. Feel a sense of perspective in every moment of your life. This serves to place you as not the center of the world, and also into an appreciation of the impact your decisions make on the world. Do not cling to the small community in front of you as if it's everything, especially if it's destroying you. In the book, they talk about the storm in a teacup. It can feel like everything hinges on this small community that you're a part of, and it's actually destroying you. When you get that sense that you need to step out into the voice of a larger community at this point, outside of that bubble where the unreasonable demands are being placed upon you, question them. And if you get nowhere, let go of that relationship, of that community, and be free from the fear that this relationship is your last. There will be another one. There will be another place to belong and to contribute. And then finally, live a life of your own chosen values. It starts by understanding where your own sense of value or worth comes from. The more one is praised by another person, the more one forms the belief that one has no ability. When receiving praise becomes one's goal, one is choosing a way of living that is in line with another person's system of values. This is a really important concept in the book that can take a little getting your head around. But the idea is essentially that praise and rebuke are both kind of the same thing. And neither is good for us, because ultimately they are both forms of manipulation and control, where the person praising or rebuking is doing so in order to mold you to their desired outcome, and thus creates a kind of vertical relationship where you are below them. You're not acting out of what you believe to be right, but you are doing what you believe will get the other person to praise you or to not rebuke or punish you. And when that becomes your driving force, your entire sense of self-worth and identity is controlled by another person or another type of person. Value and self-worth comes back to contribution to the community. But don't think of yourself on the level of acts, but rather on the level of being. It's about our being here, not about what we do that we base our worth on. And this is the same when we think about the worth of other people. It's not about what people can contribute per se. It's about, building the worth of others by saying thank you even for the smallest thing, and building their courage in so doing, not by comparing them to our idealized version of what we think they should be like. It's about encouraging people, not manipulating them. And we all have our own tasks that only we can complete. All we can do with others is to lead them, lead the horse to water. It's up to them whether or not they drink the water. And so it's the same for us, to not submit to the desire for praise or to avoid rebuke. Only when we develop horizontal relationships with other people, which are defined by contribution, gratitude, and a sense of equal but not the same, do we find the courage to be disliked and the freedom that brings with it. Regardless of what you do, it's your being here on this planet, in this moment, that gives you value. You hold great worth. No matter how great or tiny your contribution may be today or may feel today, you can make it real. You can make it authentic. You can make it unhindered by the desire to earn praise. Do it because it's right. And enjoy the freedom from being disliked, because, hey, no matter what you do, people are going to dislike you. So you may as well do something that makes the world a better place.
I think I've reached my limit now. I really have to go. Please don't try to follow me, 'cause I need to be alone. I'll be back when I'm back. I'll be here when I'm here. It's a little thing I do. I'm not being antisocial. It is nothing to do with you. You know I still love you.
Well, I hope you found this episode followable. I think, especially towards the end there. Yeah, some of the ideas, I think my head might have just got a little bit mashed. I don't know if that made sense, but hopefully there have been things in this episode that have made sense. It is a great book, really very much worth checking out. The Courage to be Disliked, How to Free Yourself, Change Your Life and Achieve Real Happiness by Kishimi and Koga. Cannot recommend it highly enough. There are aspects of it that I find slightly irritating, but overall, it's really good and a great introduction to Albert Adler, as I said. So yeah, thank you so much for listening today. I'd love to just ask you a massive favour before we go. The best thing that you can do to support the podcast and the creation of other resources around the podcast, around the Gentle Rebel stuff, other than becoming a patron through Patreon, as I mentioned earlier, andymort.com/Patreon, is to rate and comment on the show in your chosen podcast application, wherever you're listening to this today, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play. If you're watching it on YouTube, then maybe go to one of those places where you do listen to podcasts and take a minute just to search for the Gentle Rebel podcast there. Leave a quick 5-star rating. 4-star rating's okay, but it's not ideal. But that would be amazing. Just helps to get this show and previous episodes of the Gentle Rebel podcast into more of the ears of people searching for help and support with the topics that we're looking at each week. Be really grateful if you could do that. Be amazing. Okay, well, I'll be back next week with another episode of this podcast. Until then, do remember, you are an artist. The world needs your art. Now go and make somebody's day. Goodbye.